The final semester-th golden girl first snow of the season had just begun to fall over the sleepy town of Fairbridge, a postcard-perfect community nestled between two wooded ridges and a winding creek that glinted silver in the moonlight. In one of the neatly spaced colonial-style homes on Alderberry Lane, a light still burned well past midnight. Behind the frosted windows, Emma Harland hunched over a laptop, eyes glazed, her fingers hovering over the keyboard but unmoving. A half-written term paper glowed on the screen, the blinking cursor like a taunt. The room was warm, cluttered with awards and certificates framed on the wall. Fairbridge High Valedictorian 2023, read one. State Science Fair winner, another. National Merit Scholar. The shelves were lined with academic trophies, each one polished and dust-free, just as her mother liked them. But on Emma's desk sat a different set of trophies: cold coffee mugs, empty pill bottles for anxiety and sleep, and post-it notes scribbled with frantic reminders. Email Professor Klein. Reschedule midterm. Call registrar. She stared at the digital clock to 47 a.m. Her brain ached from the crushing weight of expectations she had nurtured her entire life, or, more precisely, expectations her mother Laura had planted like seeds when Emma was still a child. Emma, the brilliant only daughter of a single mother who taught guidance counseling at Fairbridge High, was meant for greatness. College on a scholarship, grad school, a future that had been drafted like a blueprint long before Emma had even chosen a major. But now the blueprint was burning. Emma had failed 3 courses in the fall semester of her sophomore year at Westmere University. She hadn't told her mother. In fact, no one knew. She had become a master of concealment, editing screenshots of her grades, forging advisor emails, and speaking in vague, enthusiastic generalities. She had even staged group photos with classmates she barely spoke to anymore. Every Sunday when she called home, she lied, and each lie deepened the pit in her stomach. The house felt especially quiet tonight. Her roommate had gone home early for winter break. Emma stayed behind, claiming she needed to finish a research project. In truth, she was too terrified to go home, too terrified to look Laura in the eye. Laura Harland had always been the kind of mother who others admired and occasionally feared. Her colleagues at the high school referred to her as ironclad but loving, a guidance counselor who had helped hundreds of students map their futures with precision. She expected no less from her daughter. Discipline, structure, and academic excellence had been the foundation of their home. "You only get one shot," Laura often said. "College determines everything." She had raised Emma alone after her husband left when Emma was only 5. Since then, they had formed a tight-knit, interdependent world of two. Laura never remarried, claiming she didn't need to. Emma was enough, and in return, Emma lived her life like she was in permanent rehearsal for a future that had to go exactly right. "I'm proud of you," Laura told her every week. "You're going to be the first woman in this family to graduate with honors from a top university. Maybe even go Ivy for grad school." Emma smiled when she heard this. She always did. But inside, she was crumbling. Back at Westmere, the snow continued to fall, and Emma finally closed her laptop. The term paper wasn't going to write itself, and she didn't have the energy to fake another version. Her thoughts drifted to the registrar's office. 2 weeks ago, she had received the final notice, academic probation. One more failed class, and she'd be expelled. She had already been removed from 2 required labs for not attending. She hadn't told her advisor. She hadn't even checked her email in days. Instead, Emma had spent hours walking the campus in silence, headphones in but nothing playing. She couldn't hear anything above the roar of self-loathing in her head. Every time her phone buzzed, she feared it would be the university notifying her mother, or worse, her mother calling to say, "We need to talk." She reached for her phone now, thumb trembling as she opened her messages. "Mom, got a call from the financial aid office. They said something's up with your enrollment status. What's going on, honey?" The message had come in 5 hours ago. Emma hadn't replied. Her breath caught. Panic surged. She considered calling. She typed out a reply. "That's weird delusion." Unravel. Emma woke with a start. Her room was bathed in gray light and quiet except for the low moan of the wind. Snow piled up outside the dormitory window like frosting, Her first instinct was to check her phone. She pulled it from the drawer and saw it instantly. 6 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and a single unread text glowing at the top. Mom, Emma, I'm coming. We need to talk. Her chest tightened. Her fingers were stiff, clammy. She pressed the voicemail button, trembling as Laura's calm, concerned voice filled the silence. Emma, I don't know what's going on, but I think you're in some kind of trouble. Please talk to me. Whatever it is, we can fix it. The illusion was unraveling, and fast. Emma dressed hastily and walked out into the hallway, ignoring the curious glances of a few remaining students who hadn't gone home for break. She didn't know where she was going, only that she couldn't be in that room when her mother arrived. At the far end of the hall, she ducked into the library. It was nearly empty. She took a seat in the farthest corner, heart pounding, and opened her laptop. A new email had arrived from the Dean of Student Affairs. Subject: Academic. Standing and Disciplinary Review. Dear Ms. Harland, this is a final reminder of your academic probation. You are currently ineligible for enrollment next semester due to unsatisfactory academic performance and multiple absences. If you wish to appeal this status, you must respond within 72 hours. Emma didn't finish reading. Her hand was over her mouth. At that moment, her phone buzzed again. Mom, I'm parked outside your dorm. Emma didn't reply. She shut the laptop, walked quickly toward the back exit, and slipped into the snow-covered quad. Her breath made clouds in the air. Her boots crunched through the fresh powder as she fled to the campus garden. She sat on a frozen bench beneath a skeletal tree and sobbed. Meanwhile, Laura stood at the front desk of Holloway Hall. I need to see my daughter, Emma Harland. Room 406. The student attendant looked her over nervously. We don't allow unannounced guests into the dorms. Laura held up her Fairbridge High School faculty badge. I'm her mother, and it's urgent. Just wait here, ma'am. I'll call her. But Emma's phone rang and rang, unanswered. After several minutes, the RA arrived and agreed to let Laura up, following campus policy for wellness checks. When they entered the room, Laura immediately saw the signs: the unmade bed, the garbage overflowing with ramen cups, and the unopened campus mail piled by the door. She picked up a letter from the D, and her hands trembled as she read it. Behind her, the RA asked quietly, "Is she okay?" Laura didn't answer. Her mind was already racing. She dialed Emma again. Still no answer. She whispered aloud, to no one but herself, "Where are you?" Emma returned to her room late that night, past midnight. The lights were off. Laura was gone. But she had left a letter on the desk, written in neat cursive. Emma, I love you. But we need to stop pretending. I'll be home if you're ready to talk. Emma stared at the note for a long time. Then she picked it up and tore it to pieces. Tomorrow, she would go home, but not to confess. She had a different plan. The confrontation arrived in Fairbridge the next morning. The sky above a dim canvas of pale gray clouds. Her old Corolla groaned as it turned onto Alderberry Lane, tires crunching over a crust of frozen slush. Her hands trembled on the wheel, not just from the cold but from the slow, inescapable sense that something inside her had begun to rupture. Something brittle had snapped. The house looked exactly as she remembered it. Picture perfect. The porch light still flickered occasionally, the way it always had. The mailbox had a red velvet bow on it, left over from a community holiday decoration. Contest, the wreath on the front door fox pine, dotted with cranberries, looked festive. But today it felt like a cruel joke. Emma paused at the curb, taking deep breaths. Inside that house, her mother was waiting, not with anger, she was sure, but with something worse, disappointment, and Emma knew she wouldn't survive the shame of it. She didn't knock. She used her old key. The house smelled like cinnamon and furniture polish. Her mother was at the kitchen table, just as she had been a dozen other times, grading papers, organizing scholarship applications for students, sipping peppermint tea from the chipped mug with the words, "You've got this," etched in fading gold letters. Laura didn't look up right away. "Hi, sweetie. I made quiche. I didn't know when you'd arrive. There's some in the oven." Emma didn't answer. Her jaw was clenched so tightly it hurt. Laura finally looked up. Their eyes met, and the silence between them wasn't awkward. It was enormous. "I read the letter from Westmere," Laura said quietly. I called your academic advisor. She said you'd stopped showing up to class. Emma, why didn't you tell me? Emma opened her mouth, but the words curdled in her throat. There were too many lies to untangle, too many bridges burned behind her. I thought I could fix it. She whispered, fix it. Laura rose from the table. Her face was pale. You were on academic probation. You weren't even enrolled this semester. You've been lying to me for months. Emma felt her skin go cold. You don't understand what it's like. Every day I thought about telling you, but I couldn't. You were so proud. You always made it sound like my success was the only thing that mattered. What was I supposed to do? Talk to me, Laura snapped. Be honest with me. I'm your mother. Exactly, Emma shouted, her voice cracking. You're not just my mother. You're the woman who built my whole life for me and expected me to live in it like it was a gift. But it wasn't. It was a cage. Laura's hand dropped to her side. Is that what you think I've done? Caged you? I gave you every opportunity. I never had. I wanted you to thrive. I didn't want you to waste your potential. What if I don't want to be your version of successful? Emma said, stepping forward. Her hands were clenched into fists. What if I don't want any of it? The scholarships, the pressure, the perfect life. I can't live like that anymore. Then say that. Don't lie to me. Don't humiliate both of us with these charades. Do you know how many people have asked me about you lately? Teachers, parents, everyone thinks you're thriving. And I had to lie to them, too. Emma turned her back, struggling to breathe. Her heart pounded so hard. It hurt, her skin flushed with heat and shame. It's not just school, it's me, she whispered. I don't even know who I am anymore. I can't keep being the girl you need me to be. Silence. A silence so deep it pressed against her chest like a stone. Then Laura said, gently, you're still my daughter, and nothing, not your grades, not your mistakes can change that. But we have to start over, from truth, from now. Emma turned. Her mother's expression was pained but open, willing to try, willing to forgive. And something in Emma broke. The tears came fast, hot, uncontrolled. She collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing. Laura held her tightly, stroking her hair, whispering things like, we'll get through this and it's okay to fall apart. It was the first time in a long time Emma felt like herself. Not a prodigy, not a failure, just a daughter. In pain, they spent the rest of the day talking. No more accusations, no more pressure. Just the painful, messy truth unspooling between them like thread. By nightfall, Laura made them dinner, vegetable soup and cornbread, and they watched old Christmas movies in silence. The tree was still up, its lights blinked gently, casting gold and red across the living room walls. Before bed, Laura gave Emma a small wrapped box. I was going to wait until Christmas, but I think you need it now. Inside was a necklace with a tiny locket. When Emma opened it, there was a photo of the two of them on Emma's high school graduation day. We'll figure this out, Laura said again. Together, Emma nodded. But something still twisted inside her, because deep down, she didn't believe it. Because some illusions don't unravel gently. 13 minutes it began with silence. Not the calm, restful kind, but a thick, pulsing vacuum of tension that hung over the Harland house like a premonition. Snow tapped against the windows, driven sideways by sharp wind. Emma lay awake in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling. The locket her mother gave her still around her neck, but the warmth of reconciliation from the day before had gone cold. Her thoughts came in spirals, not linear, not rational, questions with no answers, feelings with no source. A rising pressure in her chest that no tears could relieve. Everything was unraveling inside her, and it felt like it had always been unraveling. Long before grades or lies or Laura's proud smile ever existed. Downstairs, Laura brewed tea. She moved quietly, humming a hymn her grandmother used to sing. She was hopeful. Emma had come home. They had talked. There was damage, yes, but damage could be repaired. At 10:07 a.m., Laura picked up her phone to return a missed call from the Westmere academic office. A polite voice on the other end confirmed what she already knew. Emma had been academically suspended. They asked if she needed additional documentation for appeals or counseling referrals. No. Thank you, Laura said softly. We're figuring things out. But even as she said it, a shadow passed over her expression. The voice had mentioned Emma's name in the past tense, was enrolled, had been suspended. She looked at the stairs. Upstairs, Emma was sitting on the edge of her bed, the necklace dangling from her fingers, her eyes fixed on the floor. She hadn't slept. She hadn't eaten. Her hands were trembling. The letter from the university was crumpled in the trash, and her suitcase lay untouched by the door. She heard her mother's footsteps, heard the clink of her mug being set on the table, heard Laura dialing someone else, heard her speaking in a low, tense tone. Emma stood. She didn't think. She only moved. She walked downstairs like a ghost. Laura looked up and smiled, but her smile faded instantly when she saw Emma's expression blank, hollowed out. "Emma, who are you talking to?" Emma asked. "Just Westmere." They were confirming. "Why would you call them again?" "We already talked about this." Laura's brow furrowed. "Emma, I told you I'd need to contact them for the appeal. We're trying to fix this. You don't have to be afraid anymore." "I'm not afraid," Emma said. And it was true. She wasn't afraid. She was empty, and from that emptiness came something else. She stepped into the kitchen. Her eyes landed on the countertop, the butcher block, the cast iron skillet drying in the rack. The sound of Laura's voice droned in the background, soft, pleading, unaware. Emma picked up the skillet. Everything after that happened fast, and then slow, and then fast again. The first strike came as Laura turned, confused by her daughter's sudden silence. The pan hit the side of her head with a sickening, wet crunch. She gasped, staggered, fell against the dining table. Emma stood over her. Laura tried to speak, tried to crawl away, but Emma followed, silent, methodical. The skillet rose and fell again. And again, and again. At 10:14 a.m., the call from Westmere was still connected. A voice on the speakerphone had been requesting a callback number when the line erupted into noise. A heavy, fleshy thump, a scream, choked off halfway, then silence, then gasping, then more thuds. "Hello, hello. Is everything all right?" the caller asked. No response. Just distant groaning, scraping. Then the sound of something shattering, glass, a plate. The line went dead. 10 minutes later, the Westmere receptionist contacted local authorities, citing an alarming situation on the call with a parent. Dispatchers sent 2 units to the Harland residence. By then, Emma was no longer in the kitchen. She was in the bathroom upstairs, washing blood from her arms. Her sweatshirt was soaked. Her reflection in the mirror didn't look like her. It didn't look like anyone. Downstairs, Laura's body lay sprawled across the tile, one arm extended toward the phone. Her breath came in shallow, rasping gasps. At 10:27 a.m., she stopped breathing. At 10:30 a.m., the police arrived. They knocked. No answer. They knocked again. Then they forced the door. Inside, they found the crime scene. The blood, the broken plate, the cast iron skillet, and in the living room, Emma, sitting cross-legged, rocking slightly, her eyes unfocused. One of the officers approached slowly. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" Emma blinked. She called them, who she wasn't supposed to. She said we'd fix it. But then she called them. "Where's your mother?" Emma looked toward the kitchen. "She's not breathing." They found Laura moments later, and the silence that had begun the morning ended in sirens. A daughter's silence when the officers escorted Emma Harland out of the house that morning. She didn't resist. Her wrists were cuffed gently, almost ceremonially, as if she were a fragile object. She walked barefoot in the snow, her socks soaked red and sticking to her heels, her eyes blank. She didn't ask questions. She didn't cry. She didn't speak again. Not when they sat her in the back of the cruiser. Not when they read her rights. At the Fairbridge Police Department, Detective Saul Whitaker, a seasoned investigator who had seen a lifetime's worth of horror, sat across from her in the interview room. A camera in the corner blinked to life. A legal aide stood just outside the door. "Emma," he said gently, "we want to help you, but we need to know what happened." Emma stared at the table. The locket around her neck had been removed with the rest of her belongings, but she kept touching her collarbone, as if the memory of it lingered. She said nothing. Saul tried a different approach. "We've been in touch with Westmere. We know about the academic issues. That must have been incredibly hard, but it doesn't explain everything. We need to understand what happened in that kitchen." Still, Emma said nothing. Over the next hour, her silence deepened. She refused food. She refused counsel. She refused to be processed for over 12 hours, curled in the fetal position in the holding cell, her fingers pressed tightly to her temples as if trying to block out the world. Meanwhile, the forensic team worked through the Harland home. The scene was one of meticulous violence. Blood patterns indicated multiple blows, first to the side of the head, then to the jaw and upper neck. The cast iron skillet lay where Emma had dropped it, embedded with traces of hair and skin. A steak knife was recovered from the kitchen island, unused but within reach. The initial coroner's report estimated that Laura Harland died from blunt force trauma to the skull, followed by extensive cranial hemorrhaging. There were defensive wounds on her hands, indicating she had tried to shield herself. The neighbor who had heard the sirens described the scene later as the first time I saw death walk down Alderberry Lane. The next day, Emma was transferred to the county psychiatric facility for observation. Her behavior had grown increasingly erratic. She muttered softly to herself in sleep. She flinched at sudden noises. She refused to make eye contact with staff. Dr. Maya Ellison, the assigned psychologist, was the first to break through. She sat beside Emma during one of their sessions, not asking questions, only narrating. "It must feel like the ground was pulled out from under you, like your whole life stopped and no one remembered to tell you it was going to happen." Emma didn't reply, but she turned toward her for the first time. Dr. Ellison continued, gently, "Your mother loved you. That's obvious, and it seems like you loved her too. So what went wrong?" Emma's lips parted. Her voice came low, rasping. She promised she wouldn't call them. Call who? Westmere. Why did that matter so much? Emma looked away. Because I wasn't real anymore. I had built everything out of nothing. If she made that call, she'd see through me. You felt like you were lying to everyone. She nodded. Even to myself. That was the beginning of Emma's fragmented confessions. Over several sessions, she spoke about the spiral of fear, the weight of legacy, the quiet war she waged with her own expectations. How every A she earned came with a price: sleep, food, social life. How Westmere had gone from dream to nightmare. How isolation grew into paranoia. She described the morning of the attack as if it happened to someone else. "I was floating," she said once, "like watching myself from above. I could see everything, but I couldn't stop it." Dr. Ellison diagnosed her with a dissociative disorder, marked by acute psychosis triggered by prolonged stress, identity disturbance, and depression. The defense built its strategy around this diagnosis. Emma's attorney filed a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. They brought in experts who spoke of Emma's childhood, her academic pressures, her slow unraveling over the past year. She wasn't a monster, one psychiatrist testified. She was a scared girl who couldn't separate herself from the image she was forced to wear. When that image cracked, so did her reality. The prosecution disagreed. They presented Emma's fabricated emails, the digitally altered transcripts, the attempts to cover her tracks. They called it premeditation, a cold manipulation of truth, a pattern of concealment that went far beyond mental illness. She didn't just break down. The lead prosecutor said she staged a life for over a year. When she couldn't maintain the lie, she chose violence instead of honesty. A jury was selected. The trial date was set. The media swarmed the courthouse. The headlines ran wild. Golden girl turned killer. Academic star faces life behind bars. Straight a nightmare. The Harland tragedy inside the psychiatric unit. Emma barely registered the news. She read poetry. She watched birds gather on the windowsill. Sometimes, she spoke softly to herself, reciting lines from childhood fairy tales. Once upon a time, there was a girl made of glass. At Laura Harland's memorial service, over 300 people came, former students, colleagues, community leaders. They lit candles and told stories of the woman who had helped so many others find their way. Emma was not mentioned by name, but everyone knew. Judgment trial began on a gray Monday morning in early April, nearly 5 months after the killing. The courthouse in Brookhaven County was an austere building, limestone columns, bronze plaques, and rows of wooden benches. that had borne witness to decades of human tragedy. The courtroom buzzed with reporters, law students, and townspeople. Everyone wanted to glimpse the girl who had become both a cautionary tale and a national obsession. Emma Harlan sat at the defense table, flanked by her attorneys. She wore a simple navy blouse and black slacks, her hair pulled back, her face pale and unreadable. Her eyes stayed low, fixed on her hands, which trembled when she thought no one was watching. The prosecutor, Brent Voss, began his opening statement. With grim precision, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a story of lies, of elaborate deception, of a young woman who constructed an illusion so convincing. She believed it herself until it shattered, and when it did, she murdered her mother in cold blood to keep the truth buried." He spoke of the skillet, of the fake transcripts, of Emma's ability to stage her surroundings so that no one friends, advisors, even her own mother knew what was falling apart. The violence, he said, was not random. It was not a break from reality. It was calculated, covered up, manipulated, premeditated. Emma did not react. She stared forward. When it was the defense's turn, Attorney Helena Moore stood with calm conviction. She painted a different picture, a brilliant, fragile young woman who was slowly collapsing under the pressure of perfection. A daughter raised not just to succeed, but to embody success. She was not a cold-blooded killer, Moore said. She was a young woman who lost touch with reality, who had no history of violence, who showed signs of serious mental illness, and who begged subtly, silently for help until her mind finally fractured. Witness after witness took the stand. Professors from Westmere spoke about Emma's sudden absences, her disoriented emails, her excuses that didn't add up. A classmate described seeing Emma crying uncontrollably in a stairwell. Just 2 weeks before the killing, psychiatrists dueled with diagnoses. One labeled Emma as suffering from dissociative psychosis triggered by prolonged, untreated stress. Another claimed she was faking, pointing to her calculated lies and ability to navigate complex academic deception. She knew what she was doing, that expert insisted. She wasn't detached from reality, she was trying to control it. Dr. Ellison, Emma's counselor from the psychiatric unit, took the stand last for the defense. She did everything she could to maintain the image of success, Ellison said. When that image became impossible to sustain, her identity disintegrated. What you're seeing is not coldness, it's collapse. Outside the courtroom, the town divided itself into two camps. There were those who mourned Laura Harland and demanded accountability, and those who looked at Emma and saw someone more victim than villain. A product of cultural pressure, academic obsession, and silent suffering. She could have been my daughter, one woman whispered to a reporter. Any of our daughters. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Inside the courtroom on the day of the verdict, the air was as taut as wire. Emma stood slowly when asked. Her fingers dug into the edge of the defense table. The judge asked the foreman to read the findings. On the charge of second-degree murder, we find the defendant, Emma Harlan, guilty. A gasp moved through the room like wind through dry leaves. Emma's shoulders dropped, but she did not cry. She closed her eyes. Her attorney reached for her hand. She didn't take it. Sentencing was scheduled for the following week. In the interim, Emma was transferred back to the county jail. She spent her time writing long, handwritten letters. She never mailed, filled with apologies and pages of questions she'd never dared ask aloud. Why didn't I stop sooner? One letter read, why didn't I just fail out and come home? Why did I think dying inside was safer than being honest? At sentencing, the courtroom was half full. Judge Elena Santiago addressed Emma directly. You are intelligent, capable, and yes, clearly troubled. I believe you lived in a world shaped by unrealistic expectations, internalized responsibility, and fear. But none of those things excuse what happened in your kitchen. You took a life, not just any life, but the life of the woman who loved you most. She paused. I sentence you to 25 years to life, with the possibility of parole after 25 years served. Emma nodded, quietly, as if the sentence was just another number in a grade book. The story made headlines again. Op-eds debated whether justice had truly been served. Was this the punishment of a criminal or the institutional failure of a broken system? Mental health advocates rallied behind Emma's name. Victims' rights groups reminded the public that someone had died, but the media cycle moved on. In time, the town did. The Harlan house was sold, repainted, and rented to a young couple with 2 children. The tree where neighbors had left flowers wilted and was eventually cut down. At Westmere, a scholarship fund was established in Laura, Harlan's name, to support first-generation college students facing emotional hardship. And Emma? She turned 20 in a prison facility on the outskirts of the state. She continued to write. She took courses in literature and psychology. She worked in the kitchen, peeling potatoes in silence. Her therapist said she had become gentler, more self-aware, but never at peace, because peace is not something you win like a trophy. It's something you build slowly, painfully from the ruins, and some ruins are never fully cleared.